everyone, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a winter book recommendations video. I'm really excited to do this because I kind of realized while I was putting this list together that so many of my favorite books are very winter coded. I always think I'm gonna have fun doing my fall book recommendations videos, but I think that this one is even more fun, and I have so many more of like my all-time favorite books on this list. And I will say that this list is pretty heavily fantasy based, so if you're not into fantasy, this might not be the best list for you. But if you are looking to get into fantasy books, or you already are a fantasy fan, then I think that this will be really helpful. But I will start off with the non-fantasy books that are on this list. And the first one that I would like to recommend is one that I actually read for the first time during the winter. I read it in January because I got it for Christmas. And that is My Body by Emily Ratajkowska. And I read this, I think, was that in 2021? January 2021? My brother bought me this for Christmas and I absolutely loved it, and I think that it's the perfect book to either end the year with or start the new year with. And this book is basically a collection of essays written by Emily, who is a model, and she was actually one of the models that was in the music video for Blurred Lines, and that kind of made her both famous and infamous. I feel like this book kind of works as both an essay collection and a memoir in a way. The essays definitely chronicle her life and her evolution of the relationship she has with not only her sexuality but also feminism and other topics. She focuses a lot on the ways that she has been exploited, not only by the industry itself but also by men in general. And this essay collection includes an essay that I had read from her back in 2020 that she had published with, I believe, New York Magazine. Is that what it is? Yeah. And it was called Buying Myself Back, and it's included in this collection, but it's basically the reason why I decided to pick it up in the first place, because I had read that essay and really enjoyed it and was very intrigued by what the rest of this collection would be like. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was absolutely breathtaking and really beautifully written, but also in a way very devastating. So I would go into it knowing that there might be some content warnings that you should be aware of. This deals a lot with misogyny and rape culture and things like that, so definitely be aware of that before you go into it, but I do highly recommend it. The next two books I want to recommend are actually poetry collections, because I feel like poetry is a really great way to either end the year or start it, so I felt like it'd be perfect to include in here. And I'm actually going to start with Devotions by Mary Oliver, and this is a collection of a lot of her poems from across many different poetry books that she's written over the years. I am not quite finished with it, but I do kind of want to make this sort of a tradition every single winter where I revisit this collection and read more from it. I really enjoy Mary Oliver's poetry. I think it's absolutely beautiful and timeless. So I feel like if you want kind of a scope of her poetry, this would be the perfect book to pick up. And the last poetry collection that I want to talk about is Where Hope Comes From by Nikita Gill. I absolutely loved this collection. I believe that I read this in 2021, and this collection came to me at like the perfect point in my life. And I feel like if you've had a really tough year or a tough couple of few years, like a lot of us have, this is a really great collection to look through. It really does touch you very deeply, at least for me it did. On the inside cover it says, Nikita Gill shares a collection of poems crafted as the world went into lockdown, tackling themes such as mental health and loneliness, and the precarity of hope. Through the life cycle of a star, she invites the reader to feel connected to the universe, taking us on a journey through the 5 stages of grief to the 5 stages of hope. This was really impactful, and while it does kind of focus a little bit on COVID-19, I do think that this is a really great collection for people who are just trying to get by day, who are just trying to survive. I highly recommend it. I thought it was really great, and it's definitely a poetry collection that I'm going to be coming back to this year. Okay, into our fantasy recommendations. I'm gonna start off with some of my adult fantasy recommendations, and we'll go into YA. And the first book I want to recommend is one that I read last year. It was one of my favorite books of 2022, and that was The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I loved this book so much. I thought it was so wonderful. It was one of those fantasy books where I was like, why have I put this off for so long? Why haven't I read this yet? Where has this book been all of my life? It was so beautifully written and such like a fairy tale in a way, but it delves deeper into the cultural implications of like religion, specifically belief systems that are so much older and have so much more history and cultural relevance compared to the more organized religions that are forced upon certain cultures. I felt like this did a really, really great job of putting that within a fantasy context. So if you're interested in that kind of exploration of religion, I would highly, highly recommend this book. I thought it was super well done. And I think, as you can tell, especially from the cover, this is very winter based. And that's mainly why I included it on this list, because it's just like, it fits so perfectly into the winter aesthetic and the winter mood. I feel like you could just like put on a candle, turn down the lights, and cuddle up with this book, and it would take you away to a cold, wintry forest. It's really, really perfect. The next book is one where, like, if I think of a wintry fantasy book, this is the first one that comes to mind, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book, I feel like, is just quintessential winter fantasy. One of the scenes that sticks out from this book in my mind the most is when the circus goes to one of these little towns, and there is a tent that is just filled with ice, and it's so wintry and magical and beautiful and breathtaking, and that scene was just described in such a way that it really evoked a lot of strong emotions for me, and it has stuck so vividly in my mind ever since then. And I think that's part of why I relate this book so heavily to winter. If somehow you have not read The Night Circus and you don't know what it's about, basically it is about these two young magicians, and ever since they were young, they have kind of been in this competition. They've really been given no explanation as to what this competition is for, why they're doing it, what the end goal is, but they are basically using the circus to one-up each other. And basically the Night Circus is a circus that comes to town with no warning and leaves with no warning, and it's very mysterious and whimsical and a little bit dark in a way. And I feel like these kind of fantasy books set the perfect mood for the winter season. This next book is very obviously winter themed, and that is The Enchanted Sonata by Heather Dixon Walwork. And basically this is kind of a reimagining of the Nutcracker, which I grew up loving the Nutcracker. I watched like every version of it I could when I was little. It was one of my favorite stories. So reading this in part of last year and this year was a lot of fun. And this is just kind of like the type of fantasy book that I want to read more of. It's very whimsical, it's very magical. It has a little bit of that fairy tale element to it, which I think will be a very strong thread throughout this entire video. But this is a book I definitely don't see enough people talking about. I think it's a lot of fun, and if you don't want to buy a physical copy, they do have it available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have Kindle Unlimited, you could just pick it up for free. I'm really glad that I bought the physical copy because it is absolutely gorgeous. On the back it says, Clara Stahlbaum has her future perfectly planned. Marry the handsome pianist Johann Kahler and settle down to a life full of music. But all that changes on Christmas Eve when Clara receives a mysterious and magical nutcracker. Whisked away to his world, an enchanted empire of beautiful palaces, fickle fairies, enormous rats, and a prince, Clara must face a magician who uses music as spells and the future she thought she wanted. The Enchanted Sonata is a retelling of the Nutcracker Ballet with a dash of the Pied Piper, and will captivate readers of all ages. I highly, highly recommend this book. It is very romantic, very whimsical, and it just has that like perfect little dash of darkness to make it a little interesting. So if that sounds right up your alley, I highly recommend that you pick it up. The next book is one that I actually just reread very, very recently, and the series is over, technically. So you could totally pick it up and read the entire trilogy and even the original trilogy, and that is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. I had to include this. I just reread the series and I love it even more. This is a series that I feel like I could reread over and over and over again and I would never get sick of it. This is technically a companion trilogy to Caraval, which I do also recommend if you want to pick that up. I think that's also a really great trilogy to read around this time of year. But for me, it's always going to be Once Upon a Broken Heart. Like, this is to me personally the superior trilogy. I love it so much. It's so fun and whimsical. I think I'm gonna say whimsical at least 20,000 more times, so be prepared. But it really just is. That's like the perfect word to describe this book, and it's so fun and things are constantly happening. It's very action-packed, but not in the way that like there's a lot of fighting or war or anything like that. It's just like things are always constantly happening and it keeps you on your toes and it keeps you guessing. On the inside it says, for as long as she can remember, Evangeline Fox has believed in true love and happy endings, until she learns that the love of her life will marry another. Desperate to stop the wedding and to heal her wounded heart, Evangeline strikes a deal with the charismatic but wicked Prince of Hearts. In exchange for his help, he asks for 3 kisses, to be given at the time and place of his choosing. But after Evangeline's first promised kiss, she learns that bargaining with an immortal is a dangerous game, and that the Prince of Hearts wants far more from her than she'd pledged. He has plans for Evangeline, plans that will either end in the greatest happily ever after or the most exquisite tragedy. Oh, I love the series so much. I truly cannot overstate how much I love these books. They're so good. And the last one truly destroyed me in the best way possible. I was thinking about it, especially when I finished the 3rd book. I was like, this series is so 1989 coded. It's so 1989 coded. Like, I Know Places, Out of the Woods, This Love, Wonderland, all of those songs are so Once Upon a Broken Heart. They really are, I promise. So if you like 1989, you might really like this book. I'm just saying, highly recommend this series. The next book I want to recommend is actually from a series that I really need to pick back up, and that is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Debeau. If you didn't know, this book is translated from French, so if you happen to be French or you know French, you might be able to read this in its original form. But unfortunately for me, I do have to read it in English, but I did really enjoy it and I thought it was beautifully written and so immersive. The way that I describe this typically is that it's a very interesting and magical twist between Beauty and the Beast and Alice in Wonderland. It has a lot of elements from both of those stories, and I think that's what makes this book so special and so intriguing. On the inside it says, a mix of awkward misfit and misunderstood genius, Ophelia cares little about appearances or other people's opinions of her. She possesses 2 special gifts, an unrivaled talent for reading the passive objects and the ability to travel through mirrors. Her peaceful, if somewhat dull existence on the Ark of Anima is interrupted when she is promised in marriage to Thorn, a taciturn and influential member of a powerful clan from a distant Ark, the cold and icy pole. Ophelia must follow her fiancé to the towering city of Cida Celeste, where nobody can be trusted. There, in the company of her inscrutable future husband, Ophelia slowly realizes that she is a pawn in a political game that will have far-reaching ramifications not only for her, but for her entire world. And I think that that perfectly encapsulates what this book is about. It takes you on such a journey, and you really get to see this world through Ophelia's eyes. And it's so topsy-turvy, it's so wild, and there are so many different like political machinations and intrigue and weirdness in a way, because there's so much culture shock for her. Like, she comes from an arc where things are kind of like very much in their place, everything is very clear cut, but when she goes to the pole, when she goes to Cida Celeste, she is just completely turned on her head. Everything is so weird, everything is so different. People have these very strange relationships with each other. There were so many times in this book where I wanted to like physically fight these characters on her behalf, because she is just so out of her element and she is being used in so many different ways and people are so mean to her, and it really made me mad. So yeah, this is a lot of fun though. I will say this book is just such a blast to read, and I definitely need to finish the series. Like, this is on the top of my to-do list. The second to last book that I would like to recommend is one that I feel like I am constantly recommending, and that is The Crown's Game by Evelyn Skye. This duology is one of my all-time favorites, and I will never ever shut up about it. You can look back on my channel for the past like what, 5 years, and I will be talking about this book forever. Seriously, forever. This book is set in Imperial Russia, and it kind of has a very similar vibe to The Night Circus. So if you've already read The Night Circus and you absolutely loved it and you're looking for something similar, this might be a really great book for you to check out. Basically, it's about these two powerful wizards, and they are competing against each other to become the Tsar's wizard. And this is a very important title, and they both really want it, and they have both been preparing for this basically their entire lives. And so there's this really interesting rivalry going on between them that they've never met before, and they're constantly trying to one-up each other and do something even bigger and greater than what the person did before. And there is a little bit of a love triangle as well within this book, so that makes it really interesting. And overall, it's just such a fun book, and it is definitely set during like the winter time, so it's very snowy and magical and beautiful. And the magical and political intrigue in this book and in this duology is just so good. And the very last book that I want to recommend is also part of a duology, and that is Where Dreams Descend by Janelle Angelis. I picked this book to include in this video mainly because this actually takes place in a very cold climate, so I felt like it was very fitting for the winter time. But this also includes a magical competition, which I guess for me, a magical competition is just very winter themed. But this is a YA fantasy that is very loosely based on the Phantom of the Opera, so if you like the Phantom of the Opera, you might really enjoy this book. On the inside it says, in a city covered in ice and ruin, a group of magicians face off in a daring game of magical feats to find the next headliner of the conquering circus. Fame and glory await the winner, but no contestant is safe when an unseen danger begins striking behind the scenes. Accidents, injuries, missing magicians. Though each act grows riskier, the show must go on, and the three entangled within the dark heart of it will do whatever it takes to keep their secrets from rising to the surface. Little do they know, on a stage where love, lies, and illusion collide, nothing ever escapes the spotlight, especially in a game with no way out. Where Dreams Descend is the startling and romantic first book in Janelle Angelis' debut Kingdom of Cards fantasy duology, where magic is both celebrated and feared, and no heart is left unscathed. This is a duology that I would love to reread this year, and I think that I might just do that because I do have the audiobooks for both of these books, and I do actually own them physically. So if I want to listen to the audiobooks, I could do that, and if I want to read them physically, I could also do that. So I'm thinking that I might reread these because that would be a lot of fun, and I would definitely be taking my own advice. Filming this video has actually made me feel like I want to reread all of these books, so that's a little bit of a problem. But I do love all of these so much, and this is one of my favorite books of all time. It was so much fun, and look at my nails, they match the cover. But yes, this book is very darkly whimsical, very romantic, and like I said, it's set in this very like icy landscape, and I think that that is perfect for the winter time. I really tried to include books that weren't necessarily like Christmas themed, because while I love Christmas and it's one of my favorite times of the year, not everybody celebrates Christmas, and I wanted to do a sort of recommendations video where I would just recommend books that are winter themed. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this winter themed book recommendations video. I am so excited to bring this to you guys. I just really love all of those books and I do wholeheartedly recommend them all. If you've read any of them, let me know if you enjoyed them, and if you are planning on reading them, let me know, keep me updated. Also, if you have any recommendations for the winter, I would absolutely love to hear all of them because I need recommendations as well. So if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Goodreads, Storygraph, TikTok. All the links are going to be down below. Also Threads as well. I'm over there too. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye! Ooh,